It is pretty terrific if you married your best friend. You have those inside jokes. You know those people that have the inside jokes like we do.
You film that? Don't cut that.
Okay, we can get started.
Are you guys ready?
I think we just did a good stuff. Did
Kind
you
of
record
absurd.
this?
How long have you guys known each other?
Ooh, since I was 12. And he was 13 at the time. And I moved to Grand Isle. And he was the first boy that I was ever friends with. I had brothers, but those were fighting brothers, okay? First friend. So he was kind of my best friend when I moved there.
And I'd go to her house and say, I'd go knock on the door, and the mom would come and say, "Is Jeff here? Her brother?" "No." "Oh." "Is Steve here? Her other brother, who I never talked to?" I said, "No." "Well, is Dawn here?" "Oh yeah, come on in." But we were just good friends, and stayed friends. And 10 years later, we actually had our first date.
So how long have you been married?
42
And a half years. June 16th will make 43 years that we've been married.
How did you know this was the person you wanted to spend the rest of your life with?
You know, at first, I don't know if you exactly know that. I think when you actually start going through your marriage is when you realize this is the person that I really want to live the rest of my life with. Because that's when you kind of start to get to know each other,
I think probably too, when you make that commitment, throughout your marriage service, when you make a decision, I'm going to marry this person, you intend it for life. I mean, I did. And I never expected, looking around or thinking anything different was never on my radar. And it really hasn't been. A pastor one time said, at the end of the day, when you get to heaven, the Lord's going to ask you, what did you do with that man I gave you? And I've been working on him ever since. How could I leave or do anything else?
What do you admire most about your husband?
What I love about him is he's the best toy in the house. He's always ready to play. When the kids were young, he played with them, and the grandkids, he's just so ready to just go and get into it with everyone. And I really admire that and appreciate that about him. Also, he's very faithful, and I appreciate that about him. He's always been on my side, even when we disagreed.
What do you admire most about your wife?
I admire several things. Her compassion, and also admire her always wanting to do the right thing. She doesn't hesitate to, when something needs to get done, she just starts doing it. Doesn't matter who it is, where it's at. And I've seen her in situations where she just point blank would go tell people what they needed to do. When I'm like, okay, what are we doing this for? And just the way that she'll do it, people actually just will respond in a positive manner where you think, okay, we might be ready for a fight over here. And she just tells the truth and like it is, but in a ministering way that just always amazes me. And I've always been impressed by that.
And what would you say to a newlywed couple if they asked you how to keep their marriage strong?
Okay. First of all, I think that you need to be on each other's side. You need to back each other. I mean, it's you against the world. You're creating your own culture as a couple. You are being your family. A lot of times when you first start off, you have influences from the way you were raised, the things that you did. But as a couple, you're going to have to decide how you want to raise your family. What's your culture going to look like in your home? What your expectations are, and how you want to live. We agreed on our rules and our values and what we were going to do in our home and how we were going to raise our children and what our expectations were for guests in our home. And it was it made us a team. It made us more of a couple. And we fought for each other and for the things that we needed from one another and our family, and even if it would be the world, we'd go down together, huh, babe?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to say, first of all, we're about to be married 42 and a half years, but it hasn't always been the most wonderful thing. First 10 years were a struggle, It was hard. You get to know each other. You think you know each other when we knew each other 10 years before we got married, but you don't know each other till you start living together. And not everything was hunky-dory and rosy. It was like in about the 10th year, somewhere I just, I had some strong things coming at me, and I made a decision to totally surrender to Christ. I was a Christian, went to church, did the things, but I don't think I'd ever totally surrendered like I needed to surrender, So when I tell people, and that's why I have this here, when you always talk about a book being your Bible, well, the Bible was our Bible. But what I happened to do, I surrendered to it and decided this is the final authority. And did that with my bride. I did that with our children, and made a decision that from now on it wasn't what does Daniel wants to do, what does God say we're supposed to be doing. And nothing made a bigger impact to me in our marriage than that surrender. And I found like once that happened, things really started to get just so much better, especially when it came to disagreements or difference of opinions, because you're always going to have difference of opinion and disagreement, but how do you handle it? And we found out when we use this as the guidebook and we use this as the guideline, it just changed our marriage. When you really go to the part where it says God makes the two one, and when you realize that and then you start living it like that and recognize that, and that it's you, your wife, and Christ, that make the marriage. That's what I would recommend to anyone. The sooner you could do this, and the sooner you can surrender to this, and no offense, men, the sooner you can surrender to this, okay, the sooner you're going to see real growth in your marriage. And it's a daily decision. It's not like, okay, I decided one time. It's every day, When I pray before I go to sleep, when I pray when I get up, Lord, make me what you want me to be, in my marriage, as a father, as a grandfather, as an employee, whatever it is you're doing in your life. And I think that's what makes a marriage successful.